Thank you. Welcome to the May 18th, 2021 special meeting of the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors. At this time, we'll please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Staff announcements. This is time for county staff to provide update. Oh, my apologies, Madam Clerk. Thank you.
Report out for closed session from May 10th, 2021. 1. Public employment pursuant to Government Code 54657B1. Title, County Administrative Officer. Board action, no reportable action. Report of closed session from May 11th, 2021. Item 1. Conference with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code 54956.8 regarding price and terms of payment for the following properties affected by the State Route 4 Wagon Trail Realignment Project, Phase 1. County negotiators are Robert Packinger and Matt Satow. Properties to Scorny Ranches, LP APNs 053-001-018, 053-001-019, 053-007-011, 053-007-031, 053-007-032, and 053-008-060. Board action, no reportable action. Item 2, pursuant to Government Code 54956.9D2, conference with legal counsel, re-anticipated litigation, one case, significant exposure to litigation. Board action, no reportable action. Item 3, pursuant to Government Code 54957.6, conference with county designated labor negotiator Judy Hawkins regarding unrepresented employees. Board action, no reportable action.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Now we'll move on to staff announcements. This is a time for county staff to provide updates of upcoming county events that may be of interest to the public. None at this time. Public health update. Public health services. Receive an update presentation from staff on COVID-19 novel coronavirus.
Good morning, Chair Stopper and Calaveras Supervisors. This is Colleen Rodriguez, the Deputy Director of Calaveras Public Health, and I'm here to give you the COVID update. I'll begin with the latest data, which is current as of yesterday, May 17th. We have a little bit over 42,000 COVID-19 tests completed. We have our current confirmed COVID positive cases total at 2,143. We have 8 active cases, 2,080 recovered cases, 0 hospitalizations, 55 deaths, and over 32,000, actually pretty close to 33. We have 32,954 vaccine doses administered to Calaveras residents in total. As of 5/16, Calaveras County is about 33% fully vaccinated, with about 43% of our eligible population having received at least one vaccine. Those numbers include those folks that are 16 years of age and older, so the percentage will change once the population of those 12 years of age and older is applied. There's a few important notes that I just wanted you to know about for this week. Calaveras County remains in the orange tier of the blueprint for a safer economy. Calaveras Public Health continues to offer in-home COVID vaccines for those unable to leave home due to limited mobility or fragile health. It will be the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, and it's available to those 18 years of age and older who live in Calaveras. And just a reminder, if you are interested in this, to just call 209-419-73 Another update to let you all know is that the Pfizer vaccine has been approved for use in people 12 years of age and older. Those under the age of 18 years of age will require a parent and or guardian present in order to be vaccinated at our county vaccine sites. And as a friendly reminder, to register for vaccine here in Calaveras, just go to myturn.ca.gov, or if you don't have internet access or you just feel like you'd feel better talking to someone, you can call 833-422-4255. Some trends, vaccine registration continues unfortunately to decline in Calaveras County, and unfortunately no-show rates continue to increase. This week marks the end of the Frogtown COVID vaccine clinics. So moving forward, Public Health will be holding clinics in targeted areas throughout the county. Additionally, Saturday, May 22nd, marks the last COVID vaccine clinic by Mark Twain Medical Center. And I just want to take the opportunity to sincerely and wholeheartedly thank Mark Twain for their incredible support throughout COVID. We really couldn't have done all of the efforts that we did without them, so a big thank you to them. I also just wanted to let you know, hi Doug. Sorry, I'm having some allergy situations here. I also wanted to let you know that we're excited to share that Valley Springs Health and Wellness will start their vaccination clinics this week as well. So speaking of vaccine clinics, we have a lot of them this week. So today we have Frogtown from 9 to 4, which is a Moderna second dose clinic, but we are very happy to have folks just walk right in and we'll give you the Johnson & Johnson one shot. Tomorrow we're at the Veterans Hall in Valley Springs from 9 to 12, and again walk-ins are welcome. Thursday, we have Frogtown again from 9 to 4, but again, for Moderna second dose, but walk-ins are definitely welcome. But that also marks the initial clinic for Valley Springs Health and Wellness from 1:30 to 4:30, and they'll be doing Moderna. On Saturday, Mark Twain is doing Moderna in the morning, Pfizer in the afternoon, and then Valley Springs Health and Wellness is doing the morning of Moderna. So again, just as a reminder though, that was a lot of dates and times. You don't have to write any of that down. All you have to do is go to myturn.ca.gov, and all of that is listed there when you put your zip code in there. And I also just wanted to remind everyone is if that's not enough for vaccine availability, vaccine is also actively available at CVS and Rite Aid in our county. So at this time, I'm happy to answer questions, but first I thought maybe we could open it up to Dr. Archer Mr. Archer and Dr. Ramirez. Sorry, I just promoted you, Doug. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Ms. Rodriguez. Mr. Archer?
You know, I don't really have anything to add other than what Colleen had mentioned. So this Saturday will be our final, well, at least our final for now, vaccine clinic. You know, we remain ready to help out, and you know, if the demand is there, we can definitely do some spot clinics or support the county with the spot clinics. I appreciate Colleen's comments. We had a nice discussion last Friday, just kind of about where we're at and where we've been, more importantly. And the silver lining of this pandemic, I really do believe, is a really strong relationship between the hospital and public health. And I think we're poised to, you know, recharge a little bit over the next couple of weeks, hopefully, but really get down to some of the other health concerns that we have in our county. So I'm very happy with where we're at in terms of our relationship and looking to build on that.
Thank you, Mr. Archer.
Thank you.
Doctor?
Hi, good morning. I just want to echo Mr. Archer's and Colleen's, sentiments. The light is kind of at the end of the tunnel here, and I think we can all appreciate that. I think we all are itching to kind of get back to our lives as normal, and, the vaccine is kind of the answer. So the more people we can get vaccinated, the quicker we can all go on with our kind of normal lives.
Thank you, sir. Any board comments, questions? Mr. Garamendi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to pile on here and really thank Mark Twain Medical Center and Dr. Maris and especially Public Health for their work. As we close up the mass vaccination site at Frogtown, that was a lot of moving parts. A lot of people on the staff and in the community were involved in that, and I think we owe them a big thank you. And as we move out to these clinics, I appreciate the fact that we're going to go after populations that are difficult or maybe resistant and give them the opportunity. But I believe that our county's done a good job of providing everybody who wants a vaccine the opportunity to have one. And I want to express my gratitude to our medical providers and our staff who really made this all happen. Thank you.
Ms. Callaway.
I'm not sure if this is for the doctor or for Colleen. Can people choose which one they want? And on the in-home when they call, is it just J&J or could it be the other two? I wasn't clear what was mentioned, and how do you even go about choosing versus 2 shots versus 1? Thank you.
Hi, Supervisor Callaway. So people can choose in the way that when they go onto My Turn, they can choose which clinic they want to go to. The things that I just named off to you, we have all 3 of them available at various times. Regarding the homebound, that is just Johnson & Johnson, and the logistical reason for that is that it is a tremendous effort for not only us but our community partners to vaccinate the homebound folks, and we want to do that, but we also want to not be invading their home multiple times. So that the community understands that homebound program involves not just our public health nurse and administrator, it also involves an ambulance service being escorted with us, and it is, it also, we have to have, because Johnson & Johnson requires a certain number of people per vial, we can't just do one person or one household and then be done. So what we have to actually do is compile a number of folks in a certain community, drive to that community, and then schedule out when we will be doing each of the households. So that's why Johnson & Johnson is chosen. And Dr. Ramirez can speak about its efficacy rate. It's comparable, and so we feel like it's a better choice for those homebound folks who maybe don't want a bunch of people in their house, twice.
Anything further, Ms.
Thank you.
I have a question for Dr. Ramirez. With them making it open for 12 to 16-year-olds for the Pfizer shot, I have a 12-year-old. Is there, there hasn't been a lot of time for testing on these vaccines and what the long-term effects could be. Is there anything you can say to the effect that may make someone like me or someone else more comfortable when it comes to bringing our young children in for a vaccine shot? That, I'm a little nervous myself just with the fact that, this has only been around for a very short amount of time, and how can we be sure that there will be no long-term effects for our children?
Sure. No, definitely. I can certainly understand everybody's, reservations. But even though this vaccine itself has not been around for an extended period of time, it's the science behind the vaccines. So basically, a vaccine is giving your body a form or shape of information, and then your body activates its own immune system to generate a response, so that if it ever encounters the pathogen, so in this case COVID, in the future, your body is properly equipped and armed and ready to fight off that infection or that virus. I don't know if this helps you or not, but my son is 11, and he will be turning 12 in July, and I will be taking my son as well, not because of my choice, but I've given that choice to my son. And I've asked him what his reservations are, what his concerns are, and I've done my best to try to address those concerns with him. So if there's any hesitation, I would recommend that, you talk to your physician or your pediatrician in this case. And I think we're all on the same page that, we would not be giving these vaccines to even our own children if we didn't think that they were safe and effective.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I appreciate it. No further board questions? No further board questions? Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. I appreciate it. I'll move to public comment.
There is no public comment at this time.
Thank you. If there's no further questions by the board or any more statements, we'll be thanking you very much for the public health update and the information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
At this time, we'll move to public comment. Any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agendas may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda, unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the next order of business. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued as the last item of business in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. Madam Clerk.
There is no public comment at this time.
Okay, we'll give it another 10 seconds for possible stragglers and the delay. Okay, we're good. We'll move on to a regular agenda. Integrated Waste Management. Receive presentation on integrated waste management and provide staff direction concerning revisions to the tipping and solid waste parcel fee schedules and concerning the design of Phase 3 at Rock Creek Landfill. Mr. Ferriani?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. Can you hear me, Supervisor Stopper?
Yes, sir.
Okay. My name, well, first of all, good morning to Chair Stopper and board members. My name is Paul Ferriani. I'm the Integrated Waste Manager. I have also with me Jennifer Pratt. And we'll kind of share the presentation. Wanted to start off just giving you kind of an update on integrated waste, then go into a fee study, and then part-time credits, and then get direction on Phase 3. So if we go to the first slide there. Go to the next one. And then the next one. Okay, so the integrated waste, our operations down at Rock Creek, we have 23 employees. We operate 7 days a week. We're open from 8 to 4:30, and that's the same on all the transfer stations. There's of course, like a landfill and a MRF, a material recovery facility. There's also 6 outlying transfer stations that most of you have probably been to, or some of them, and those are operated by a subcontractor Gamby Disposal. They're open anywhere from 3 to 5 days a week. In 2020, there were, at the transfer station, there was about 330,000 customers. The slowest one is the Paloma transfer station that had 11,000 customers, and the busiest one would be Avery. They had 112,000 customers in 2020. Avery is open 5 days a week. The Rock Creek landfill is a canyon landfill. It's divided up into 4 different phases. It opened in 1991. The actual landfill itself is 57 acres. The phase 1 was split into a phase 1A and 1B, and then phase 2 was split into phase 2A and 2B, and we're currently in phase 2B right now, and that opened in 2005 to current, and it should last until about 2024. So it's been open, the Rock Creek's been open about 31 years, which is about a third of its life. We have phase 3 is the largest of the 4 cells. We receive waste from Calaveras County residents and Western Alpine County residents. The landfill receives about 170 customers per day on the average. That's about it for the landfill. In 2004, we did buy the land on the east and the west side of the landfill. Integrated Waste purchased 7 parcels, a total of 735 acres. Of course, at the north end is Hunt Road, and at the south end is Rock Creek Road. The next thing I'm going to get into would be the equipment at Rock Creek. We have quite a bit of equipment. We have 10 vehicles, and we have 23 large pieces of heavy equipment. The vehicles are older. All of them qualify for surplus but one. The 23 large pieces of equipment, all of them qualify for surplus but 5. We spend about $500,000 annually on maintenance because the equipment is so old. We intend starting next fiscal year to purchase 2 new pieces of equipment and then purchase 2 the following year, and then hopefully get on to a 10-year plan so that we can cut our maintenance costs down. IWM has a number of systems, and these are anything from, there's a flare system from phase 1 that was covered in 2012. That burns the methane gas that's produced as the landfill breaks down. There's a blower, 2 motors, a blower, and a burner, and it requires quite a bit of maintenance. There's the Rock Creek and Red Hill both have a well with a well distribution system, so we're unfortunately, this year we ended up replacing both well motors. We have at the Rock Creek, we have a material recovery facility, which is where we do most of our recycling, and we accept household hazardous waste. And that's for smaller vehicles, loads that come to the landfill. And then, of course, there's 6 large volume transfer stations that were built anywhere from 74 to 76, and those are operated by the subcontractor Gamby Disposal. We have the landfill, the closed landfill at Red Hill and Rock Creek are monitored by a number of agencies throughout the state, with CalRecycle, Regional Water Quality Control Board, Department of Toxic Substance Control, California Air Resources Board, our local County Air Pollution Control District. Local Environmental Health does the LEA inspections on behalf of Cal Recycle. We have Cal OSHA that comes in for a number of programs, and we also have the old BOE. About 3 years ago, they changed their name to the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, and we just had an audit, and that came out really good. Jennifer did a wonderful job with that. And then our next slide, we get into our budget. I think it's the secured solid waste is from the parcel fee on the left-hand side, and you can see how it's divided up on the right-hand side. There's a Gamby, any comment there? Gamby contract takes approximately $2 million. The staff at Rock Creek, and of course we have staff at Red Hill and Wilseyville collecting yard waste, battery oil, paint, and things like that. Our equipment cost, as I mentioned earlier, is $500,000. Maintenance of both facilities, Red Hill and Rock Creek, our 87 costs for the county, and then our gas and oil, and then our monitoring costs, which is done by a consultant, GLA, and the sub-consultant is One Solution. Next slide.
Sure. Let's see here. I think if I could add something. Good morning, Board Chair, members of the board. My name is Jennifer Pratt. I am a department analyst for Integrated Waste Management. I came on in mid-February, and it's been a pleasure getting to know the solid waste system for our county. I'd like to add something to what Paula was saying. As you can see, the majority of our total revenue is consumed by our total major expenses that we have. So the next slide will be an expanded version to really elaborate on our total budget at the time. So here we have on the left-hand side our total expenses for IWM. You see our major expenses that were indicated on our last slide, our contracts and our salaries, and then we have additional 2.9 in additional expenses. We do have a few special revenue accounts with IWM. We have a Cal Waste franchise, and you can see our current fund balance here. We do have a proposed draw for our projects that that are in the future of our phase 3 of design, and also we have our Red Hill slide repair project that is necessary to complete. Additionally, we have the solid waste capital improvement. Excuse me, I'm going to go back to that and correct myself. The Cal Waste franchise, we're going to be, the proposed draw is for some capital equipment and our regulatory fees. The capital equipment will be replacing some of our aged equipment that is quite costly to repair and maintain. And we'll be adding a few additional pieces of equipment, and we will go over those in further slides. The Solid Waste Capital Improvement Fund, again, that is designated for the improvements. We have the Phase 3 and the Red Hill slide. So this, again, is expanded here, showing that our total revenue and our total expenses and gives us a deficit of 2.9.
On the additional expenses there's about 1.1 million that's going to be carried over from this fiscal year into the next because GLA has not completed phase 3, which we'll get direction from you later in this presentation. And then the Red Hill slide, by the time we got the bids last year, and we actually ran into winter, so we couldn't move forward with that project. They're actually having a meeting today there, and the project will move forward this summer.
Ms. Callaway?
Could you go back to the previous slide, please?
Sure. Would it be this one or
Yes,
one more?
that one.
Okay.
I'm really not clear. The 5.2 million, that was real clear from the first or second slide. And the total expenses, is that the 52 plus the 380 plus the 2.2? And then we're short 2.9? And is that from, where are we getting that? From the draw? And the draw from Cal Waste, from the franchise fee and capital improvements is less than 2.9.
So, yes, so these additional expenses that you see, the 2.9, those are in addition to those major expenses. So what you're asking is the draw for the capital improvement and the phase 3 from the franchise for the capital improvement and the solid waste capital improvement for the phase 3, you're asking why it's not meeting up to the 2.9. Is that the question?
Well, I was assuming your total expense of 8.1 is more than the one on the slide that showed 5.2, where your revenue and expenses were the same.
That is correct. And what I was trying to communicate, if you don't mind, I'm going to slip back to that slide, is that the majority of our revenue is consumed by our total major expenses. So what I would like to communicate there is just these major expenses that we experience with IWM consumes our total revenue that we're receiving at this time. So the next slide was further expanding that, trying to demonstrate that we have these additional expenses that add up to a total of the 2.9, making that total expense at the 8.1. Does that answer the question?
Close, thank you.
Okay.
No, thank you. Go ahead, Mr.
Jennifer, this is Supervisor Garamendi. I just want to make sure, to Marita's point, the slide before you have a balanced budget. You have revenues and expenses. On this one, you've got additional expenses at 2.9. This is one-time expenses that we're talking, or are these ongoing expenses?
These are ongoing, Supervisor Garamendi.
So, really, so just so I'm clear, so we're actually running a $2.9 million deficit?
Well, but
would you like to decline? You are correct.
I think part of it's recurring. The other part is one-time expense, but that's going to be carried over into the next year as, per example, the Red Hill slide.
and the GLA contract also will be carried over 1.1.
Right. So those are effectively one-time expenses and not recurring.
Yes.
They just end up being carried over because we aren't finishing them in the current fiscal year?
That is correct.
All right, thank you. Is that more clear? Thank you. All right, no problem.
The next slide, I guess. So the next slide, as you can see, there's always surprises between Red Hill and Rock Creek. This year, Rock Creek went about 30 years without having any methane issues at all as far as the liner goes. It's a Class 2 landfill canyon. We never had any issues. Last year during Thanksgiving and during Christmas, the flare motor went out for over 5 days. And all that methane being generated, it has to go somewhere. So we did give a it was either through a leak or a rip in the bonding of the cell itself. So we now have a methane leak on the west side, and it's settled down. The flare has been going fine for the last 4 or 5 months. But that could be another big issue as far as ongoing one-time expenses, but it could cost. So far, I'm guessing with the monitoring and stuff like that, we spent about $20,000 to $40,000 on that. If you look at our proposed on the right-hand side, in 21-22 fiscal year, we'd like to purchase some equipment. The Caterpillar loader is 1998. The service truck, I believe that's from the early 90s, if not from the late 80s. It doesn't even meet CARB. The Red Hill water tanks, there's a old wooden tank at Red Hill. It's pretty much fallen apart. The Red Hill reported facility information requires us to have 20,000 gallons of water there because we can have up to 10,000 cubic yards of green waste on site. So for fire suppression, and we're going to put that in right at the first of the year, July 1st. The following year, we'd like to purchase some equipment. We have a 2007 compactor and we have a 97 compactor, and they're both qualify for surplus. A new compactor is about $1.2 million. They will come in and take your old compactor, put a new motor in it, new seats, new hydraulic lines, new air conditioning, new everything for about $500,000. And then we have a backup loader. We have 2 of everything because if something breaks, we have to deal with the situation. Our good Caterpillar actually the frame is welded together. It was done by a public works mechanic that did a wonderful job, but that could break in half anytime. So we'd like to get a second loader in 2 years from now. I guess that's about it. Questions?
Mr. Ferriani?
Yes.
Can you go back to that last slide? I'd like to talk about the water tank at Red Hill for fire suppression. You may want to look into grant funding for the tank and go the roundabout way. Is they will not, through OES, they will not provide a water tank, but if you make it out of fire resistant material and replace that wood tank with a metal tank, they will most likely approve grant money to do that. So I would suggest taking that route to offset some of the cost. Just a suggestion.
Okay, and would that be John Osborne or?
That would be, well, he could probably introduce you to the right people at Cal OES.
Okay.
But that's.
Thank you. That's a great suggestion.
Yes. Any other questions?
Ms. Fulmer.
Hold on, sorry. I have a question. This is Supervisor Fallendorf. Do you have a total cost of all the deferred maintenance compared to what you have on the screen right now for what is proposed? So this is what proposed, but what is the overall total of everything that could, obviously this is going to be a one-time expense each year, which is then reoccurring expenses for a long time.
We don't have a total cost, but I would be happy to get that to you to compile something that would be more comprehensive on all the deferred maintenance that is current and compare that if you'd like.
Thank you.
Yeah, our maintenance right now, like I said, was $500,000. We're actually $75,000 over that this year because the equipment is older. We're trying to do for the next couple of years, or proposing to purchase 2 large pieces of equipment each year, and then we would like to get into like a 10-year plan where we just purchase 1 piece of equipment And we're hoping as the equipment is newer, it would actually reduce our maintenance costs by about $150,000. So that would pretty much take care of the cut the maintenance down to about $350,000. That's the thought process. Whether or not that happens, but that's what we're trying to do. A lot of the equipment we have is 20 years old. Any other questions before we move on?
Just for clarity, there's going to be quite a few more expenses that aren't ongoing, that are not are not depicted here in our presentation today.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before we move on to the next slide?
No, Ms. Pratt. Not at this time.
Okay, the next slide we're discussing two tipping fees, green waste fee and a solid waste fee. The fees have been in existence for quite some time. The green waste fee from '92 and the solid waste fee from 1981. As you can see in the bottom there, I went and calculated just labor costs, trucking costs. I did not calculate wear and tear for the green waste, but it came up to about $171,000. If you put equipment cost in there, it'd probably be well over $200,000. We chip at the Wilsonville transfer station twice a year. We chip four times a year at the Red Hill transfer station, and we chip about 36 times per year at Rock Creek. Of course, at Rock Creek, it's fairly inexpensive because all the equipment's there. The trucking costs from Wilsonville or Red Hill, one company charges $115, the other one charges $105, so it's $110 an hour to get the green waste down to Rock Creek. I contacted some private contractors. They're basically, for chipping, it's $500 an hour. If you figured the $500 an hour plus the trucking cost, that's where the $750,000 comes from. Our green waste fees, you can see Calaveras, Amador, and Tuolumne County there. Ours are fairly inexpensive and have been, and same thing for our solid waste fees. Next slide. So at this time, we're just recommending so that we can purchase new equipment and move forward. Our fees would, if we went from $4 on green waste to $8, and from $8 to $16, which is still well below our neighboring counties. And then the slide on the right shows a little bit as far as what we could generate as far as revenue goes to offset some of our deficit spending. And of course, we're back to, yes, go ahead.
So can you go back to that last slide? I have a question.
Sure.
Why has there been any consideration of charging based off of weight rather than cubic yard? And I'm just curious versus the neighboring areas of how they deal with their waste.
Right. Per tonnage.
And I just as a comparison to if we're going to be considering rate fees, is that something that can be put into this calculation of what we're looking at?
On the solid waste fee, a lot of times we do charge, if it's a truck, we do charge by the ton, but well, not really, it's usually cubic yard on everything. I don't know how much difference that would make.
Well, I think if
That's
someone's hauling concrete versus leaves or pine needles from up the hill, there's a complete difference in weight. I mean, it's apples to oranges.
Yeah,
Correct.
there's still the handling fee, or the handling time, that's involved. And we do get a lot of pine needles from District 3, so yeah. Does that answer your question, Supervisor Fallendorf?
Not really. I would really like to see a comparison from weight to cubic yard feet. So when we're considering these fees, we have a more robust fee schedule to consider.
Understood. Yes, those comparisons have not been made. As far as weight goes, it was compared on the fee study, primarily all by cubic yard here, just so that we were comparing apples to apples on that. Changing our fee schedule into a weight or a volume on that has not been vetted out. All it's been is continuing with the current cubic yard fee structure that we have.
And this brings me to a point I was going to bring up later. You just call it a fee study, Miss Pratt. I mean, yeah. And what I see is a fee comparison.
You are correct.
And I think that's part of what Ms. Fullendorf's question is moving forward, justifying changing these rates would have a fee study and then also introducing the comparison at the same time. And consistently, when she brings up weight, we've talked about this during our solid waste task force meetings. It's been brought up, what is the cost per ton? Because that's what more landfills work off of in the state, from my understanding. So, but those are all questions for the future, and I'll bring up later. But I just want to clarify that a little bit. Ms. Mullendorf, is that down the route that you were going?
Yes, it was. Thank you. And just because of the weight and some of the materials, the wear and tear on the equipment, I mean, it's if we're having to take care of that, we need to make sure that we're able to collect the fees necessary to maintain that equipment, especially if it's not just something that can be easily burned or buried. Thank you.
Understood.
No, thank you.
We, as far as like the green waste, once we chip it prior to it being used as alternative daily cover, it is weighed, and of course anything brought from Wilseyville or Red Hill to the landfill, it's weighed prior to coming into the landfill. So we do have weights. Of course, it is a difference versus the volumes that we charge at the gate. We do not have scales at Red Hill or Wilseyville.
Understood. Let's go ahead and move forward, and we can continue the discussion.
I guess we could go to questions or.
Well, we could quickly go over this slide. I think that we've addressed most of this, but the intended increase is that, the use of revenue would be recouping more of the landfill operating cost and supporting implementing that 10-year equipment plan. as a result, you're going to reduce that major expense that we have of maintaining this equipment, being that we are a 7-day operation and we operate about 40% more than most other departments. So the wear and tear and the impact to our equipment is quite heavy. So that is something that we would like to address to reduce that expense there. Again, applying this modest increase incrementally to kind of reduce that gap and reduce that abrupt impact to our constituents would be important. Any other questions? I think that we've probably addressed them, but just in case, before I move on, is there any other questions?
It looks like we're ready to move on at this time.
Sure. The part-time credit, the history of it, it was established around 1985. This part-time credit applies to those owners that are in part-time status, meaning 90 days or less in their residence, most of them second homes. They must apply for this reduction. And this would be a 25% reduction they would receive if they qualify. They have to have a timely completion of that affidavit, which is due by June 1st. The qualified property owners, like I said, will receive that reduced solid waste parcel fee the following fiscal year. It is quite difficult for IWM to validate these claims, as it is an affidavit stating whether or not they're in these residences part-time. As we know, that's becoming, there's a larger market. This is quite outdated concept since we have the VRBOs and we have a lot of vacation homes and a lot of folks that really do rent these residences out more frequently than the 90 days, and it generates a significant amount of waste for our county. It is quite an arduous process to apply this reduced rate and costly to our staff in multiple departments, and not just, it doesn't impact just IWM. What we're recommending is to process the current request that we have already discussed or mailed out, and then amend this ordinance to remove this part-time fee in the future. I'd like to correct that, the part-time credit, I should say. Any questions with the part-time credits?
Mr. Garman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jen, on the fiscal impacts, that minus $13,275, that's what it costs us to process these part-time credit claims?
That's what the part-time credit claims if all 354 applicants are applied the reduction, that would be the impact for the reduced rate.
So by removing the part-time credit, our net gain is $13,275.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Without considering staff time in the different departments.
Thank you.
Yes.
Just one comment. Years ago, Integrated Waste had approximately 4 office staff, or excuse me, they had 8 office staff, and we are down to 4 right now. Basically, the 2 of us, and then there's an engineer and an admin assistant at Rock Creek. So we have, the staff has gotten smaller, and the regulations and a number of items involved with the landfill have gone up time-wise. So our days go by really quick.
I would like to add something as far as Supervisor Garamendi's additional impact would to be considered the waste generated as well with these vacation homes. So that is something to consider as well, and that is not something that we can quantify at this time, but we do know that it is occurring.
Thank you.
Yes, is there any other questions?
Not at this time.
Well, the last thing that we want to cover is the expansion of our landfill. Like I said, the landfill itself, the footprint of the canyon, it's 57 acres, and we've used up about a third of that, so it's been open since 1990 to current date. We've pretty much filled up phase 1, phase 2, and now we're into phase 3. Phase 3 is approximately 40 to 45% of the 57 acres. It's a 20-acre cell overall. Not only is it 20 acres, but it's also wider, deeper, and taller, so it will last longer than any of the other phases. As you see, 20 to 54 years. The 20 years is based on 4.5% growth, and as most of you know, the county has zero growth, and California in general has a zero growth at this time. So there's two options. As was done in phase 1 and phase 2, you can divide the phases up into 2, or you can do the whole, they call them a cell. You can do the whole 20-acre cell, or you can do a half. We would like to get directions so that we can relay that information to GLA or consultants so that they can basically start on a design for one or either option A or option B, and then once that design is completed, they'll submit that to the regional board for review, and that's a 6-month to a year process, and other agencies will also comment on that. But we'd like to get direction at this time just so we can move forward. Any questions?
I do not see any at this time. We can move forward, and then we can have the board discussion post the rest of your presentation. Oh, Ms. Callaway? My apologies.
No, I just, what, I looked at the phase 3A and 3B. The cost for A is between 5 and 9, and B is 5 and 8. And yet, when we look at the cost options, it shows on the graphed one, Paul, it shows A at 15 and B at 9. What am I missing? I mean, if you wanted a recommendation from me, I wouldn't have a clue where to start.
Well, both option A and B, there's the landfill itself is called a leachate pond, and that has to be, the existing leachate pond is sitting where phase 3 goes, and that will have to be relocated into phase 4. And that's why B is if you look on option B and phase 2B, it's a little bit cheaper because the leachate pond has already been moved.
But if I heard you were asking which option we would be wanting, you'd want direction for as A or B?
Yes, to do half a cell or the whole cell is what we're asking for direction on. If you do the whole cell, a lot of the liner is exposed to the sun, and there's an additional cost. If you do option B, which is half the cell, and that's kind of the logical way that most landfills go. Some of them are even doing shorter, you know. It's affordable, and it's doesn't expose the liner to many years of sun. They do have sunblock liners, but that's an additional cost also. So, you maybe go to the next slide.
Supervisor Callaway, can I address maybe some of your concerns? I'm trying to hear your question. Are you referring to this next slide when you're seeing the $15,000?
Correct.
Okay, so the $15,000 would be the maximum, and the phase 2 option B, the $9,000 would be on the upwards of you know, the cost of that phase 3. What this is showing is our balance in our capital improvement fund, and it's showing there's our unfunded liability here on those cost options.
When you go to the prior slide,
Go back.
oh, all right, I think I just answered my own question. I just answered. Thank you, Ms. Pratt, I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Is there any further questions on this slide?
No.
Mr. Toffanelli.
Yeah, I'm just looking at what you have presented to us, and you're saying option B is probably the better option to go, which I can understand why you're saying that. But total money-wise, though, it could be up to, if not more than $2 million more than if we went with original option A, from what I'm looking at your charts and your slides. Option B is the most for the first phase was $9 million, the second phase is $8 million. That's $17 million versus the $15 million total for option A. And
Yes.
even the lower cost is about $1.5 million more, because that adds up to $10.5 million, and you only have $9 million of the lower end cost for option A. And I don't know what the additional costs are there for, as far as the escalating costs for doing option A or B, because you said it, either way, the pond would be moved before you can open and start on either phase 1 or phase 2 of option B. So I'm not sure what the additional costs are there for, being projected for.
Well, option A, of course, is the whole cell. That's 20 acres. And of course, that would be up to anywhere from 20 to 50 years. Option B is only half the cell. That's only 10 acres, and that would be anywhere from 10 to 28 years. So it's option B is a little bit more affordable at this time, but then if you want to save money, you do the whole cell. Most of the industry is going with the smaller cells at this time. I'm just my personal guesstimate. I've been with the county for 31 years. I started when Rock Creek opened. I would guesstimate that if you went with phase B, it's going to last 25 years. There is an additional cost. Of course, there's inflation and everything else to calculate in, but 25 years is a long time for a cell. It's the current cell we're in right now it was put in 2005. It will probably last close to 19 or 20 years. It's about not quite a third smaller, but it is much smaller. So That's for what that's worth.
Supervisor Toffanelli, I'd like to clarify your question. Are you referencing back here the 20% to add a 30%? Is that what you were referencing?
Yes, both option A and option B. Option A
Correct.
says estimated cost $9 million to $15 million for option A.
Correct. Those values there were given to us by the Geologic and Associates, and that is that's within their estimate. So those values are there, and they're giving that room and flexibility for increased expenses. And as we know, building costs and contracted labor is fluctuating. And as we progress in this project and complete the design phase, those numbers could potentially change by the time it happens.
Thank you.
And that's part of the answer. As you know, Mr. Toffanelli, when you work construction, if you build half the building and then pick up shop and move somewhere else and then build the next half of building, there's additional cost to moving everything along with expenses moving up. And the other reason that they're going with an option B as opposed to the less cost on an option A is because the county doesn't have the money for option A. We don't necessarily have all the money for option B. So it's like, that's where the part of the decision lies is, which path do we want to go? And I'll talk to another path later after they're doing their presentation that they don't have in here. But that's part of the reason why they're giving the two options.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Garamendi.
Just a quick question to Paul's comment. Paul, you said the current cell we're working on was opened in 2005, and that we're a third full. Did I hear that correctly?
No, the current cell opened in 2005. It should last till about 2024, about 19 years. The overall landfill is about a third full. The phase 1 and phase 2 are about a third of the landfill.
Okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, phase 3 is the biggest cell, and that's about 40 to 43% of the landfill. So it's going to last a number of years. Phase 4 is smaller. There is an option one of the engineers came up with to cut out part of the canyon down below, but that's not in the actual 57 acres, but and that could be expanded. But my personal guesstimate is there's the landfill is going to be good for another 70 to 90 years with the build out of phase 3 and 4.
Is there any questions before we move on to the next?
Ms. Allendorf.
I have one more. What's not included in these options is what the state regulations are going to be mandating. So how are those costs going to be factored into if we were to expand? Because there's multiple deadlines coming up on these things, and the most recent study is that most cities and counties are going to be having to increase from the previous proposal you had up to 20 to 40% just to meet the mandates on top of this expansion. So how are those costs going to factor in if we do open or expand?
Well, in the larger cities, there's a Senate Bill 1383 that's out right now, goes into effect January 1st. In September, we will be coming to the board and requesting a variance for 5 years. The Calaveras County qualifies for the variance because we're under 70,000 in population. And therefore, at this time, we won't be impacted. There are facilities in the county, like the larger stores, some of the restaurants, we're guessing less than 10 that will be impacted under that Senate bill. But we, because we're a small rural county, will not be impacted. There's about 25 counties in California that qualify for the variance, and we will, I already have the resolution prepared, but it's not going to come to the board till September.
But you still have the recovery bill that you have to meet too.
Mm-hmm.
So how do those impact fees for the recovery compliance?
We will be exempt from most of that bill because of the rural county. It's estimated that the 25 counties that are exempt only produce about 2% of that waste.
I'm not talking about SB 1383. I'm talking about the 2024, 2023 recovery. They're two separate things.
Okay. I'm not familiar with that at this time. I apologize. I know that there was they started with AB 939, which was 50% cut back. But being a small rural county, we are exempt from most bills. 939, we've met that requirement. As most of the board members know, we were on a 11-year compliance order for our recyclables. That was lifted in late 2019, or actually early 20, with the help of Cal Waste, and Brian Moss went to Cal Recycle and had that compliance order lifted. But right now, we're in pretty good shape as far as recycling goes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure what bill she's talking.
Let's move forward.
Sure. So the direction on phase 3 design, it's, as we indicated before, that this is going to provide some clarity on necessary funding. And the potential solutions here, I believe what Supervisor Chair Stopper was referencing is on this slide. The funding options that we have discussed here is the revisit parcel fees, to apply a temporary increase on those to cover those costs of the new cells. We could obtain a loan, or there's general fund support. Those are the potential solutions that we were discussing. But as Chair Stopper indicated, it sounds like there's an additional solution that he's referencing. And on the slide on the left is, again, just kind of further describing and demonstrating that the least, or the less option here on the phase 3, option B at the 9 million, just indicating and showing that revenue right now at 5.2 and our expenses are roughly 8 million. We're going to need some funding. We're going to have to make some decisions moving forward to fund this this next phase 3 that we're talking about. Any questions at this time?
Thank you. Just a quick question. Revising a parcel fee, do we do that as a board, or does that need to go to the voters?
Oh, the entire, the entire parcel fee would have to go to the voters, but the revision suggested in there on the part-time fees does not need to. That was a decision by the board, so we can make that adjustment ourselves.
Gotcha, but unfortunately, that's only 13,000. For every dollar that we...
My apologies. Let's do one mic on at a time, and then just for the feedback.
So for every, for every dollar that we increase the parcel fee, how much dollars does that generate?
You're talking about the part-time?
No, not the part-time. I'm talking about the one that would have to go to the voters.
That would be a question for them. Jennifer, how many? Let's see. The parcel fees go to built or improved parcels in the county, right?
That is correct.
So, how many improved parcels are there in the county at this time?
At this time, there's roughly about 23,000 that this fee is being applied to.
So that's $1, $23,000.
And I can see I could back out our revenue is 5.2, and we've got 150. I'll do the math. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I ran a couple quick figures. For every $10, it's about 288,000. The parcel fee, it's not exactly, some places based on the waste generated pay 2 to 10 parcel fees, commercial businesses.
If I could add something to the parcel fees, I think it's probably important to note at this time that I do plan on doing an audit of these parcel fees to ensure that the parcels that should be having this applicable fees are in fact having them applied. There are areas that we can revisit and look at and checking on occupancy of properties as building finals these residences or these improvements. That way we are ensure collecting on parcels that we should in fact be collecting on. I plan on doing that after the roll closes. That will ensure that we have the most current and up-to-date information.
I would just like to also add, Supervisor Germany, I'm not sure that raising the parcel fee would require going to the voters. There's definitely, at the very least, a noticing of each parcel requirement, but I'm not sure that it needs to actually go to a vote.
At this time, we're not requesting an increase in the parcel fee.
Ms. Callaway.
Is it a fee or is it a tax? I mean, we're using the word fee a lot, but
a property-related fee like this would be a fee subject to some of the notice requirements, I believe, of Prop 218. But there's definitely solid waste property-related fees are not necessarily taxes. Certainly, we'll take a closer look at that when integrated waste comes forward with whatever increase it's proposing to make sure that that we're following the rules about Prop 26 and 218.
I mean, Paul, thank you very much for not raising it. The board's never had the courage to put it back out. But I'm not real clear what a temporary increase means. Can you temporarily increase the fee without it going out to a vote? And
I believe that would be something that would have to be further investigated.
I mean, if you're going to do it, do it. If we're going to do it, do it.
Is there something further, Ms. Callaway?
Yeah, I have other questions. I'll wait till they finish. What was the option that you had, Ben?
Well, I was going to bring up that, we as I brought up earlier, we got a fee comparison, not a fee study. So that, if there's going to be, as per Prop 26, as Ms. Julie Moss Lewis brought up, our council, we would have to justify raising it so that we were in the confines of what the cost was to be able to apply. And when it comes down to it, there's a lot here that Ms. Fullendorf brought up that's not being accounted for. Consistently brought up the question, what's the cost per ton? We report to the state how many tons we put into our landfill on an annual basis. And how do we, it seems simple math to me. I would like to see that number come forward on what the cost is per ton for us to process. Because if we were, this isn't necessarily a solution that I'm fond of, but if the cost of business and to build the cell is so extravagant that we can't afford it, I don't think we can take out a loan legitimately. I don't think we can take a loan out, and I don't want to do that to my people and try to justify, how we're going to pay it off when we don't know what the economy is going to do in the future. So there's a third solution, and again, I'm going to repeat, it's not one I'm fond of personally, but is, do we close the landfill down and do we start outsourcing because of the cost per tonnage? And I think, I've talked to Dave from Cal Waste about this in the past. We kind of butted heads a little bit about it, but at the same time, he's got a good point. What's the cost to do business? Is it cheaper to send it out of the county? And that's another consideration that's not being put before us right now. And not that I'm one that's for that, but we need to have all our options on the table and know what that cost to do business is before we make a legitimate decision. So I think, at one point, I asked Paul to bring this forward today, and I do want to get the board, thinking about this, but I think there's more questions that we need to have answered before we do give a recommendation on which path we move forward in the future on whether it's plan A, plan B, or plan X that I just brought up. I think there's a lot more work to be done so that we actually know these numbers, and we can make a good business decision for the constituents of the county based on all the data. Mr. Garamendi?
I think you had a very good point, Mr. Chair. In adding up the stuff on the first couple slides, I worry when I see $2.9 million deficit and increased revenues by changing the tipping fees and part-time credit of less than $400,000 in aggregate. I think we should ask what it costs to outsource this, but we ought to also ask the flip side, well, what if we went big? What if instead of outsourcing, we became a place to do that? So I think we have to ask both sides of that question.
Very good.
I don't know.
Good point.
Because if we're talking about revenue to cover the expenses, well, what are our options? And I really have no background in that, so I don't know.
And that's where it comes up, the cost per ton, because if we were to outsource it to another area, they charge by the ton when you go into the other landfills. And at that point, can we do it for cheaper than them? Because if someone's heading out of San Joaquin County, why would they come to Calaveras to do it the opposite way? So we need all those numbers to understand that.
If I could make a comment, Supervisor Stopper?
Yes, Mr. Faircounty, I apologize.
In the original report from GLA, they did an analysis on the cost per ton, and it was around $80 per ton. And that sounds really high because most landfills do it for about 40 to 45. If you take out the transfer stations and all the other stuff, we're right in line with, we might be a little bit higher than what it costs on a really large landfill. The reason we do that is because our employees are not paid what most landfill workers are paid. They're equipment operators and they're paid much better. A waste worker one starts down there at $16.71 an hour. But if you take out the 6 transfer stations, we're right in line. Something to keep in mind, we have 7 transfer stations and a landfill that we pay for. Every 6,400 people, they have to drive usually less than 5 miles, the majority of them, to get to dispose of their waste. Or, of course, they have the option of curbside. If you live in a neighboring county, you're paying much more for curbside. I live in Tuolumne County, and I pay about $36 a month, and that doesn't include the rate increase this year. And that comes out to like $160 more than what they pay in Calaveras County. So keep that in mind, that we do have a fantastic system that was put in place with the number of transfer stations and landfill that the public has access to. In Amador County, you basically have 1 transfer station and a satellite transfer station where you pay $29 to $30 per yard. Tuolumne County, it's the same thing, but really you only have 1 choice. And then the fees, like we showed earlier, are significantly more.
Good point, Mr. Ferriani. I appreciate that information. Ms. Callaway?
To me, one of the county's greatest assets is our landfill. And it's for, as I heard Paul say, 75 years out. And years ago when we purchased those additional 700 acres, it was for the future. When you even start considering, because we've talked about it, opening it up to outside people coming in, we are reducing the ability of that landfill to service the residents of our county. I'm not saying in perpetuity, but at least for the next 70 years, 75 years. It's not a good idea to open up our landfill, which is our constituents' greatest asset, besides us, of course. So I would like you all to take that off your let's consider it list.
Well, very, very good point, Ms. Callaway, and I do agree with you. It is a great asset, and when we got the people to, even though I wasn't on the board when they voted this in, this is something I really believe in, is when they voted to pay that parcel fee, they voted to retain the landfill here, and that's something that we should protect, in my mind. But at the same time, if we're going to make a good decision, we need to have all the cards on the table. But I do agree with you 100%. From one of our lesser assets over here behind the chair and the gavel.
I have a comment.
Ms. Fulford.
I'd also even be interested in a hybrid model, too. Because the other downside, unintended consequence is if we do away completely with the landfill, is more garbage on the side of the road, there's other illegal dumping. So we're providing, the county provides something that makes it easy for people to get rid of their waste. But what if it looks like we're transferring out as well as keeping some part of a model hill? What would that hybrid look like? So we're all meeting mandates but not having to be burdened with some of these costs as well. So I would be interested in seeing what that would look like too.
Very good. Any further board questions or anything? Because if there aren't at this time, I'll open it to public comment, and then we can come back and make some recommendations on which way we would like staff to go. I have some suggestions to add to that. We'll open public comment to anybody online, and if you would like to make public comment from the audience right now, you're more than welcome to walk up to the podium. And, we can have people hold online. They'll give them an opportunity to call.
have one person online.
Very good.
I'm sorry. No?
Yes, sir.
I heard you say something about online. Jack Fiore, I'm the CAO with California Waste Recovery Systems. Good morning. To not reiterate a lot of what we talked about, but to throw a little color into it, maybe. I think the idea to stop burying trash at Rock Creek landfill is worth looking into, but I don't think that it would include necessarily changing the parcel fee methodology, nor closing the transfer stations. I think those would all have to stay open. I think that the day-to-day operation, as the county sees it, or as the resident and the community knows it, shouldn't necessarily change, but you could change the act of burying the trash. And the budget is a little difficult to interpret. It's there's not a lot of narrative with the numbers, but I don't see anything close to the $80 figure that Paul mentioned. It looks to me like it's at least $200, and that would only represent about half of the costs in that one budget class, and there are actually a total of 6 budget classes in your budget for IWM. But even looking at a $200 number per ton, I think that Cal Waste could probably do it for half of that, or darn close to half of that. I think that if you go back to the Butte Fire, Forward Landfill down in Manteca was a real friend to Calaveras County. They discounted their rate of disposal for you all, and I think you were paying at that time $24 or $25 a ton. There's still transfer costs, there's still trucking costs, and of course that was 5-6 years ago. But and I have not asked them what their price would be today, but I knowing from our own business dealings with them, I suspect it'd be somewhere in that $30 range plus the additional expenses. So even 30 versus 80, if that's what it's costing you, that doesn't make sense. You start throwing the other related expenses on it, and 100 versus 200 or 100 versus 250 would allow you to do a lot of things. You're going to have closure costs with that landfill, and this would allow you to start funding the closure. You may find yourselves in a place down the road in 4 or 5 years where maybe the parcel fee could be slightly reduced. Maybe it doesn't have to be 150 anymore. Maybe it could drop to 125. So it could actually provide an additional fiscal benefit to your residents and businesses. And I guess lastly, I would say by taking your garbage somewhere else, you transfer the risk for that trash to somebody else. It's no longer the county's problem. It's no longer the county's risk. It's no longer. It's owning a landfill is kind of like perpetual endowment. I mean, the expenses go on for at a minimum 30 years and typically forever. So starting to manage those future expenses would be a benefit, an added benefit as well. So that's it.
Thank you, sir. Any further public comment from the audience? With that, we have someone online.
Yes, Evan Edgar.
Hello, I'm unmuted. Shall I begin?
Yes, please do.
Chair and board members, my name is Evan Edgar. I'm a registered civil engineer for Total Compliance Management. I worked for the Kern County for 10 years, and back in the 80s, I shut down 5 landfills there before Subtitle D, which was a federal law to landfills, and back then AB 939 started. Then I started working on behalf of the industry in Sacramento for 25 years, and back then in the 90s I shut down 8 landfills on behalf of the counties for transfer and recycling centers from Sonora to Susanville. So back then, when federal Subtitle D liner requirements meant AB 999 recycling, there was a change in time, a change in history, and a lot of landfills shut down when I was there. Today, I represent the California Compost Coalition, implementing SB 1383, and is that same space and time where there's a lot of significant challenges and changes in volumes and systems. Today, California has 1.68 billion tons of disposal capacity. The average tip fee statewide is $54 a ton. There is plenty of cheap disposal capacity in California. There is no landfill crisis in California. I recognize Rock Creek as a rural, low-volume landfill. I've seen many of them over the last 30, 40 years throughout California. I think there should be an option C. What option C would be for is a partial final closure plan for phase 1 and 2, but you reserve the contingency capacity in units 3 and 4 for future generations. You stop the bleeding now, and you keep disposal security in the future. Option A and option B are very expensive. $9 million in liner. There's $18 million in future closure costs. And those are backloaded costs that are expensive. We have dwindling volumes that we've already experienced, and with 1383, those volumes will go down. There's a statewide recycling rate of 75% that still is yet to be met. So the tons are down, costs are up, and the state average is $54 a ton. I know Rock Creek landfill. It's a canyon landfill. Seen a lot of them. It's very easy to do a partial final closure. You can easily cap unit 1 and 2A, and on the side slopes on unit 2B can be closed as well. So that's a partial final closure that happens all the time. So you fill up your remaining volume by 2022, 2023, and then you save units 3 and 4 for later. The closure costs for a partial final closure would be closer to $7 million than $18 million. No new liner at $9 million, and reserve unit 3 and 4 for contingency capacity. GLA is a very qualified engineering firm. They know tons. They know closure costs. They can easily do this analysis. Another thing you can't do nowadays is use green waste as alternative daily cover and count as recycling. In 2020, that stopped. So any green waste has to be shipped out or else be used to be composted. I'm part of the California Compost Coalition. We'd like to see that happen. The tonnage is imperative. A ton is a ton, and a yard does vary. I know that GLA can actually put everything in the tonnage terms. So please take the time to have GLA analyze the option C. It will cost you $15,000 maybe, but it will save you over $15 million in cost. There's no need to overhaul, there's a need for a timeout on the field to transfer and recycle. So let's reserve units 3 and 4 for later for future capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ecker. Any further public comment?
There's no other public comment.
Mr. Garamendi.
Mr. Chair, I want to thank everybody for all the work they've done on this, but I was thinking about what Supervisor Callaway said, and she got a good point that this is an asset for the long term for our county. One of the thoughts I've got as I listen to all this, I'm sorry, Marita, can you turn off your feedback? One of the thoughts I had was we need a whole lot of capital in order to do this next phase. We have a changing regulatory environment, as Supervisor Follendorf put forward. We're having reduced changes happening all the time. County government is not really renowned for being flexible. Have we thought about taking that section B, that section 3, and saying, hey, we're going to RFP this for a 30-year contract? This is what the county needs. Let someone else run it and maintain the assets ourselves and look at a 30-year deal. Maybe they could be more efficient than we can. They could upgrade the equipment. I mean, maybe we don't have to run it. We could hold it as an asset for a long time and let someone else who does this, I don't know, just an option. I haven't thought that through.
Option D.
or D, E, F, wherever we're at now.
No, that's a good point. Very good point. I hear you. Barring other supervisors having more comments and everything, my personal feeling on this is to make a good decision, I need more data in front of me. And I want to thank Paul and Jennifer for the work that they've done so far. They've compiled quite a bit, but we have to make this decision sooner than later with us running up on a short runway with the time that the cell's going to be filled. So barring look, I would definitely like to see more information on money, what the cost is to do business, and everything else in front of me. But also, I definitely am in favor of bringing back the part-time fee sooner than later to be adjusted. I would like to see that Ms. Julie Moss Lewis reviews it, and make sure we're going down the right path. But these other fees at the gate fees, if we can do that legitimately, I would like to see that come sooner than later. But I think we need from my personal perspective, I could be wrong, we may need a better fee study. Right now we have a fee comparison. And I think that a better fee study would give us more accurate numbers on everything for when it comes back to us. But I would like to see that come forward sooner than later. I would like to see this item come back to us in another study session, possibly in August, which is, a couple of months down the road, and we can get more of this information, and with the items that we discussed, what is the cost to do business outside the county? What's the cost if we were to RFP it? And if there's any other suggestions on what other options can be presented to us, I think we can make a more sound, educated decision with that information being in front of us. I would like to know the tonnage cost accurately. Now, also, all the way up until last year, I would agree with Ms. Ferriani on growth in Calaveras County, but the Black Swan event, COVID, yes, California's population is decreased. Calaveras will not show it in the census because the census happened during COVID, but Calaveras is increasing right now. It's much different than the rest of the state. And anyone that talks to any real estate agent in the county would agree with me on the way Calaveras County is going with growth right now. So that depletes the amount of years on cell 3. And if there's the option Q or whatever it is, where we bring in outside people, that depletes the amount of years, as Ms. Calloway brought up also. But, that would come out in the wash on knowing what the cost is to do business. Is there any disagreement with that type of direction? Is there any additions to that?
I'd be curious what kind of funding is available too with some of these mandates. And not only that, some of the infrastructure, if needed projects, if the other funding out there that we're not aware of, especially with infrastructure bills and California having a surplus. What do we need to get kind of shop ready to be able to put in and get some money, even if it's $100,000 for the tank? I don't know. Just what other things should we be looking at to offset that this organization can offset? Yes. Also, I would be curious, okay, 2 contracts. I would be interested in learning more about the contracts. I'm new, so I'm unfamiliar with these contracts. Paul, thank you, you sent me the Gamby one, but I would like to understand more of how it all intertwines with how operations work, if that's something that could be done.
Mr. Toffenelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like some more information also on some of this stuff. Part of the information that we need to know, I think is very pertinent, is if the current sale is going to be closed, it lasts until 2024. We have some options in front of us, option A or option B or whatever we decide to do. We need a time frame of how long it's going to take to open that cell. Do we need to start next year constructing it? Are we going to need the funds to start next year? I mean, we need some more information on where this cell is going. How far away from the current cell is it? Are we going to have to not only cost to open another cell, are we going to have to move buildings that we have now or the entrance, or we have to construct roads to the new cell? Those are all added costs that need to be put into this thing when we get a final number on it. But at least we need to know an estimated time to get this cell open, the next cell open, if we're going down that road. So we know how soon we need to start or come up at our next, if you're going to bring it back in August, how much time we have to get funding together to do this. So I think it's very pertinent we have that information.
Agreed, Mr. Toffenelli. Mr. Garman.
Yeah, I agree with Gary, and that's a great point. We need to figure out how urgent we're dealing with this situation. Just as an aside, Amanda our Supervisor Fallenhoff is correct. Dumping is a major problem. More access we have for people to remove their items, refrigerators, couches, the less our county public works is picking them up off the side of the road. Certainly in my district, having the transfer stations is an important part of our community, probably also our culture. It's where you figure out what's going on. And so I would hope that we would value that piece of Calaveras and keeping that going as well, but also just increasing accessibility. So if we figured out how to do the math and make this not a deficit, but provide more opportunities would always be good. It's just commentary.
Yeah. At this point, I don't see it not becoming a deficit. Without us doing some extravagant work and getting some parcel fees changed, gate fees. I mean, that all goes into knowing what the cost to do business is. Mr. Toffenelli, is there something further?
Yeah, Julie's going to do some work on this, which I hear what you're saying. Thank you, Julie, and Sarah, who's not here. Can we at least? Can you look when this was passed? The language, can we get a copy of the language that this was done with when we had the parcel fee imposed? I'm interested if that parcel fee was specifically for just Rock Creek, or did it include not charging any fees for the transfer stations? I just want to see what that specifically said in it that was passed. So, thank you.
Good point, Mr. Toffenelli. Well, Mr. Ferriani, Ms. Pratt, we do want to thank you for the work you've done so far. And you do have a video to go back on everything we asked for on direction to refer to. So is it clear?
Yes, I would like to make a comment for Supervisor Toffenelli. The timeline is, 2 to 6 months for GLA to, once they're given option A or B, to come up with a design, and then once it's forwarded to the state, that's going to take 6 months to a year. And our current cell is getting full. It's, in a year and a half, and then there's also the construction bids and things like that. So you're looking at approximately 2 years, and it's a tight timeline. Putting things off is probably not the best idea, but if that's what the board desires, then we'll do that. But keep in mind, we are on a tight timeline, and 6 months is a lot. The land, if you guys come down here and visit us, you'll see it's building up. And I hate to run out of space and have things trucked out of the county for an additional cost. That's my only comment on that. But the timeline, you're looking at 2 years. There's 2 to 3 years maybe left in the cell. Maybe it just depends on how much waste comes in.
Understood, Mr. Ferriani, thank you. We're past the public comment point. I apologize, Dave, but is there anything else any supervisors would like to add to that? No? With that, we'll close this item, and we look forward to seeing you earlier in August, because we do have a tight timeline, Paul. And again, appreciate the work you've done so far.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Pull out my agenda. Supervisor announcements. In compliance with Government Code 53232.3, board members shall provide brief reports on any meetings attended at the expense of the local agency and make other announcements or report out. Supervisor Garriman.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Callaway.
Nothing to report.
Supervisor Toffenelli.
I do have something to report. We had a LAFCO meeting last night. Marita was in attendance. And Marita was elected chair of LAFCO for the year. So congratulations, Ms. Callaway.
Congratulations, Ms. Callaway.
Did you hear something cryptic?
Supervisor Fullendorf.
Nothing to report.
I just, showed up Saturday to homecoming. It was a good time. I was surprised to see how many people and bright faces I saw there. A lot of local people that I haven't seen in a long time. A lot of people I didn't recognize. But, it was good. I think everybody was really respectful of each other, and, was just glad to see Calaveras moving again. That's it. Thank you.